The new RTX 4070 Ti Super has landed, and with more VRAM than the card it replaces, a bit of a performance boost and the same MSRP, could NVIDIA be onto a winner? Well, in this video, I'm going to be building an awesome 4070 Ti Super gaming PC build to find out, showing you guys what parts I'd pair up with NVIDIA's latest GPU and exploring performance as we go. Let's do this. The Cooler Master Cube 500 flat pack is a case that lets you do it yourself, with support for full-size specs in a compact form factor. A highly adjustable design lets you build as you unbox, and it really is like nothing else. What's more, support for up to E80X motherboards, 360mm long GPUs, and a 280mm AIO up top make it super versatile for the latest components. Build it your way with the Cooler Master Cube 500, now available in black, white, and macaron. Check it out at the first links in the description below. The best and only place really we can start in a video like this is by starting off looking at the GPU in question. In this case, it's of course the new 4070 Ti Super. It's a bit of a mouthful. This particular card comes in from MSI, which is actually one of the MSRP designs. Coming in at $799, it keeps the same price as the original 4070 Ti. You get more memory, and the memory that you get is actually faster with more bandwidth, which is great to see, but otherwise there aren't too many changes. Modest boosts to CUDA cores and RT cores obviously help to ensure this card's going to give us a bit more performance, but the main upside really is memory. And it's good to see NVIDIA improve a card nowadays without charging you more money for the pleasure. This is not intended, as are none of the new super cards, to be an upgrade for someone who already has the original non-super variant, but instead it's meant to be a better option for those who might already have been considering a 40 series GPU, but haven't quite felt like they wanted to pull the trigger just yet. The original RTX 4070 Ti was of course a powerhouse at 1440p. I mean, remember, it was originally intended to be NVIDIA's cheaper 12 gig 4080 before they thankfully shelved that plan. But it is still a really powerful GPU. For most people, a 4070 Super will be more than enough. The Ti version, and now the Ti Super, just gives you a bit more firepower, shall we say, to push those frame rates that bit further. This MSI card with its silver or white accents on the front is going to match really nicely with the overall build aesthetic and theme I've gone for today. But that isn't to say that it will be for everybody, and there are some more dark designs like this Zotac Gaming Trinity Black Edition, which are also worth considering. Both of these cards are fairly small and fairly compact considering how big previously a 4070 Ti tier GPU has been, while the Zotac Gaming card looks like it might give us a bit more RGB and a bit more flashiness. Much like the 4070 Supers, the new 12-pin cables seem to be standard on all of the Super refreshes. Previously, some AIBs were opting to keep multiple 8-pin connectors. Those days are gone. So something to bear in mind when looking at power supply choice a little bit later. The only way to actually evaluate how good either of these two are, though, is of course to build a killer gaming PC. So let's stop messing about and let's look at the other parts that make a build like this possible. Now, of course, the CPU is the first one. With the 4070 Ti Super being quite a powerful GPU, we of course need a high-end processor. I'd instinctively look at the Ryzen 7 and i7 lineups. I've opted for the i7 14700K due to its higher core count and slightly better clock speeds. Intel's 14th gen, I suppose a bit like the Super range, is a refresh, albeit Super seems to be a better executed refresh than 14th gen, and has received rightfully a lot of heat at times. But the 14700K, providing you give it good cooling, is a really capable processor. You get more cores on this chip, and that's going to massively help with our multi-threaded performance too. Great for those of you who want to like stream, video edit, or do higher workload tasks. I'll be installing it onto the MSI MAG Z790 Tomahawk Wi-Fi. Now, this is one of the Max motherboards, and what this Max designation means is that it's Intel 14th gen ready. No need for a BIOS update, we should just be able to pop the CPU in and basically get going. MSI have gone for these sort of neon green accents on the board, which definitely won't be for everybody. And although I've gone for a lighter theme, I'm hoping that with all the other components in, and of course our cooler and our graphics card covering a lot of the board, that it should still fit with the theme I'm going for. I guess there's only really one way to find out as we progress through the build today. Features wise though, this board is absolutely packed. I mean, take a look at this M.2 slot, looks pretty Pretty unassuming. Push a button and the heatsink comes off. Oh yes, want to put it back on, nice and easy, and it makes the M.2 installation completely toolless and very easy. The rear I/O is also pretty good. 20 gig USB-C here, 10 gig USB Type-C here, and plenty of high-speed Type-A ports. You also get Wi-Fi 7 as standard, which is going to give you amazing Wi-Fi connectivity, both in terms of signal strength and in terms of potential bandwidth, with 2.5 gig networking and an optical audio port to boot. For under $300, which was the price at the time of filming this video, this is a really good value motherboard and outflanks a lot of the far more expensive options on the market. The most important thing though is that we actually get support for, of course, our LGA 1700 processor. Push the arm on the socket down, lift it up, or something like so, and then just drop our i7 into place. Do this nice and gently, pop the cover down, keep hold of the black plastic as you may need this in future, and then secure the arm into place. Tying in slightly with the lighter white theme of some of the components in this build is the RAM. Now this is the Lexar Ares DDR5, but it comes in this beautiful white. It's not too large, there's good latency and speed options available. Second and fourth DIMM slots, there is of course 16 gig in each of the DIMMs for this build. Bit of pressure on both sides, and that's going to slot in without too many problems. Yeah. SSD wise, I've picked up the Corsair MP600GS. Now this is a 2TB PCI Gen 4 drive, not the quickest Gen 4 drive, but a lot faster than even top-end Gen 3 solutions. This 2TB drive set me back about 150, but you can find a 1TB for about 85, 500 gig for even less at about 55. As normal though, latest pricing and availability will be linked in the description below. Now this is the bit where I can show you again, actually for real this time, just how easy the M.2 installation is. So that's no screws. Then the M.2 drive goes in, again, no screws. This little notch or tab, if you will, covers over the top. And of course, our M.2 heat shield should click back into place. Aha, slightly misaligned. Boom. I made a mess of that and it still only took me, what, less than 30 seconds? Really, really amazing to see. With that, the motherboard assembly's nearly there, but we do need some cooling. And with the i7, as much as it's got good performance, it's not a cold CPU by any stretch of the imagination. And that is where the MSI E360 comes in. This is like a bit of an MSI takeover, but we've really been impressed with some of their new cooling products, and the E360 is no exception. It's available in black or white, comes in around the £120, $120 mark for the 360mm variant, and of course gives you 3 RGB fans included as standard. The water block design too is just absolutely gorgeous. This all lights up, you can sync it through your motherboard. I mean, it's just an absolutely stunning design. The reason I'm unboxing the CPU cooler now is so we can actually look at some of the mounting hardware, mainly the backplate, and get some of the installation done while the motherboard is out and easy to access. A quick cursory glance, and this is the hardware I think we need. We've got our Intel brackets for the actual water block, then the backplate, which is going to go through the rear of the motherboard, the screws, which will screw down into the backplate, and then some thumb screws, which will actually secure the whole cooler block onto the CPU itself. Talking of backplates, you actually get 2 included. So this one is our 1150 bracket, and this one is our LGA 1700 bracket. You get this cool little 3M strip on either side of the bracket. Now this is basically just to help hold the bracket in place while you screw the cooler in. It means that when you actually pop this through each of the holes, if you apply a bit of pressure where that sticky stuff was, the backplate itself just won't fall off, and it makes the build a little bit easier. It's a nice quality of life feature, if you will. I'm then going to take those Intel posts we discussed earlier and start threading those through each corner of the CPU socket area on the motherboard and into the backplate at the rear. Get these nice and tight, as these are what we'll be using to install the water block into place. Just need to tighten these up by hand, no need for any pliers or anything like that. And once that's done, the motherboard assembly is complete. And the next stage of the build is going ahead and looking at the case. And I'm actually really pleased with my choice here. It is the new MSI Gungnir 300R. I've used MSI's Gungnir range before and been pretty happy with it all in all, but this one definitely takes it up a notch when it comes to not only build quality, but also the feature set available. Not only do you get an integrated GPU support bracket that works for both vertical and horizontal GPU installations and lights up, but you also, if we look at the PCI lanes at the rear of the case, we'll spot 2 thumb screws here, which we can use to take out the included horizontal horizontal GPU mount and easily replace with the vertical one instead, which I'm actually going to be doing for this build. Look how easy that is, just a couple of thumb screws. And then at the rear, not only is the cable management absolutely immaculate, but you also get an integrated ARGB, and I think this works for fans too, yes, ARGB and fan hub. Now they've ran everything really nicely for us, which is great, and all of the RGB connections are actually daisy chained, meaning we can install the cooler by just plugging up to the existing cables that are already there. I mean, absolutely fair play. Plus, did I mention 4 fans as standard? I'm just impressed. There's not really much more to say, and I'm hoping that when we pop the motherboard in, the whole thing's gonna look pretty good. Now, we should just be able to slide the motherboard in. All the standoffs, I think, are in the right place. Click it over the center raised standoff, and then just 9 screws to pop it into place. Try not to worry too much about the black color of the motherboard for now. I'm hoping once the cooler's in, and once the GPU's in, it should add a nice bit of contrast, and the white theme should start to really come together. With that being said, I wouldn't mind some new white motherboards. If MSI or Asus or ASRock are listening, white motherboards please. There's too many white cases and not enough white motherboards. Or graphics cards, though they're becoming a lot more popular. The next job is installing the all-in-one liquid cooler. Now, to be honest with you, we can install the AIO at the top of the case, which I think would actually look quite good, or at the front. I'd initially thought the front was going to be the best bet, but I've kind of changed my mind. I think there's loads of room at the top, so the radiator with the fans is going to just fill that space. First port of call is popping the fans onto the radiator. These are what are going to pull the air out the case and through the rad, and we can do this now before moving it into the case. All the long radiator screws you need come included in a bag with the CPU cooler. Then just a case of actually screwing the radiator into the top of the case, and once that's done, I need to take the water block, which I think looks amazing by the way, and add the Intel brackets on. You can see there's some screw holes here and some included brackets, which fit quite nicely together, and once they're on, then I can install the water block onto the CPU. A short drop of thermal paste, and then the cooler is going to go on without too many problems. Add those thumb screws on to secure it down, and I'll deal with the cables and wiring properly a little bit later. Next up is the GPU, and this is where we can try the included vertical mount. Now you will need to pick yourself up a PCIe riser cable. This is what's going to take our main PCI slot and move it basically down wherever we want it. This should be pretty easy to install. I've gone for an NZXT one, but I'll link a range of different options below. Now what that then means is we just need to pick ourselves a couple of PCIe slots. Ours is only 2 slots, and obviously the further back that we go, the better the airflow is going to be. So I'm thinking maybe the middle 2. Now I've just realised getting the screwdriver in there is going to be kind of difficult. So what I think I might do is actually just take out the whole bracket. It pops out really very easily, and I think I might be able to attach this to the GPU now and then slide the whole card in from the back of the case. If so, that's going to be pretty cool. Then I think we can just slide this back in. That's working all right. We could be on to a bit of a winner here. Just tighten these screws down, and then of course need to actually connect up the riser cable to the bottom of the graphics card. You know what? That is really coming together, and I think all it needs now is some nice PSU cable extensions to finish it off, and of course a power supply to connect up to, and that is where the MSI A850GL PCIe Gen 5 comes in. Now this graphics card has a recommended PSU wattage of about 750, or a minimum I should say. 850 is going to be absolutely fine, as would 750 to be honest, and this MSI unit is uniquely positioned in that it's one of the cheapest PCIe Gen 5 units available. That means that in our bag of fully modular cables, we should indeed be able to find ourselves a custom Gen 5 cable. Now this has 600 watts of maximum power throughput. Our 4070 Ti is going to consume way less than that, about 250 under gaming load, and these cool little yellow tips mean that if the cable's not fully inserted, you can tell, because you'll see yellow sticking out. In terms of the other cables we need, I'm going to pop a SATA power cable in for our RGB hub. We of course need a pair of CPU power connectors to go to the top left of the motherboard, and of course our motherboard power cable. We're going to extend all of these to these nice easy DIY fab extensions and plug the Gen 5 cable straight in. Don't want to put an extension on here, want to make sure we keep this nice and vanilla to avoid any potential issues. And once all of the various cables are in for the build, we should be able to turn it on for the first time. I'm not sure if I've wired the RGB up correctly. I think I might have smashed this. Gotta say, that is looking pretty good. There's only really one way though to see exactly how this thing looks and the RTX 4070 Ti Super performs. It's time for some benchmarks, but first, an epic GeekaWhat montage. In order to evaluate the performance of the 4070 Ti Super, we tested it in a wide range of titles, from your AAAs like Alan Wake 2, Starfield and Cyberpunk, through to more esports games like Warzone, Fortnite and Apex. As a quick note, we did face a few pre-release BIOS and driver issues with the MSI 4070 Ti Super that both NVIDIA and MSI ensure us will be fixed within the coming days. So in order to properly represent the 4070 Ti Super, we've also tested Zotac's MSRP Edition Trinity card, and you can see both shown on all of the graphs today. Let's start with Starfield, shall we? Here at 1440p high settings, the 4070 Ti Super achieved up to 98 FPS on average. This puts it well ahead of the original RTX 4070 Ti with the frame rate uplift of about 10 frames per second, and helps it to get much closer to the 4080. We are of course expecting performance gains on the new 4080 Super, which we'll be looking at in more detail next week. Move through into Hogwarts Legacy, and again the 4070 Ti Super delivers a really strong increase in frame rate over the original RTX 4070 Ti. Here we're looking at an up to 13 FPS increase. As I say, we are expecting the MSI 4070 Ti Super to close the gap with that Zotac card once those pre-release performance bugs have been ironed out, but 117 FPS at Hogwarts at 1440p is certainly not a bad showing. Move through into Cyberpunk, and here you'll see a number of different bars to represent both the 4070 Ti Super with DLSS and ray tracing enabled, and of course without. Let's go for the number with everything enabled first of all. Here you can see up to 103 FPS, and a game that visually actually looks really amazing with that ray tracing technology enabled. We'll turn that ray tracing technology off and go back to that rasterization performance, and the frame rate shoots up to a maximum of 124 FPS on average. Move through into Apex Legends, a bit more of a competitive high FPS title, and here the 4070 Ti Super achieved up to 256 FPS on average. A very small differential here between the MSI and Zotac cards we tested, likely due to a CPU bottleneck that's occurring in a game like this, where the GPU side of things is far easier to execute than that of the CPU side. Moving through into a game like Fortnite and dropping it back to a slightly easier to run title also demonstrates good results. Here I tested at 1080p competitive settings to really push the card and see how high we could get that frame rate. Up to 315 FPS on average was the answer to that question. It is below the 7900 XT and XTX, and fairly considerably behind cards like the 4090, but it actually goes as far as beating out pretty much every other card in our testing suite. In Call of Duty Warzone, we get a max of up to 173 FPS on average with the 4070 Ti Super, lagging behind only the 4080, 7900 XTX, and of course RTX 4090, while Call of Duty's Modern Warfare 2 at 1440p high settings sees up to 195 FPS. This is level pegging with the 7900 XT, perhaps this card's closest rival, especially with AMD's latest price drops, while again some of those pre-release driver issues that we face with the MSI card show their head, with an 11 FPS differential here. In Formula 1 2022 at 1440p using the ultra high preset, we see impressive results once again, with up to 284 FPS, lagging behind only the 4080 and of course the likes of the 4090 had we tested it at 1440p in F1. While moving through into one of the newest titles, or the newest title on our testing suite, Alan Wake 2, and you can see our smaller historical dataset here doesn't give us quite as many points of comparison. But what it does show is that the 4070 Ti Super consistently beats out the 4070 Ti and of course the newer 4070 Super by solid margins all around. Before wrapping up the benchmarks, we should also look at the cost per frame analysis we did. This was in Apex Legends at 1440p and Hogwarts Legacy at 1440p. This shows exactly how many frames you're getting for your dollar or pound, and is a great indicator of the best value GPUs. You can see the 4070 Ti Super in Apex Legends delivers a cost per frame of $3.12. This is significantly better than the original RTX 4070 Ti, and puts it level pegging with AMD's 7900 XTX, a GPU that's widely been considered to be pretty good value. That doesn't make it quite as good value as something like a 7900 XT, or of course a much less powerful 7800 XT, but things are heading in the right direction. Hogwarts Legacy was a similar story. Here the 4070 Ti Super is actually better value for money on a per frame basis than the 7900 XT, and massively improves upon the original 4070 Ti, with around a $1.50 reduction in the amount you're paying per frame. It can obviously be a little bit difficult when you're looking at cards pre-release and some of the driver and BIOS optimizations aren't quite there, and we would expect the issues with this MSI card to be remedied very quickly, and you can keep an eye on our review linked in the description below, where we will update those numbers in due course. Looking at the maximum performance potential of the 70 Ti though via our testing with the Zotac Card 2, and it's clear to see that NVIDIA have once again delivered a really solid increase in performance over the original non-super variant. The extra video memory further sweetening the deal, but price drops on the 7900 XT from AMD, who are only getting more and more price competitive in the GPU space, could well present a thorn in the side of the RTX 4070 Ti Super. What do you guys think of NVIDIA's latest midlife GPU refresh? Let me know in the comments below, and as I say, you can read our full review linked at GeekaWhat.com in the description, where we will update those numbers once some of those pre-release driver issues hopefully are ironed out in the coming days and weeks.